In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus is asked the question, "Which is the greatest commandment?" He answered, "Love God with all of your heart, and with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself." And then again, at the Last Supper, he says the same thing, but with a twist. "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this all people will know that you are my disciples." This time, Jesus replaced your neighbor with one another. This new love that Christ commands of us goes much deeper than the Old Testament commandment he was quoting in Matthew. The people we have been commanded to love has expanded beyond our neighborhoods to include, well, everyone. And this includes people who might make this commandment a bit difficult, like that confrontational coworker who just seems impossible to get along with, or your in-laws who've never treated you like a part of the family, or maybe the person you just met, who you don't even know and really need some help. You see, Jesus knew his physical time on earth was nearing an end. So in this new take on the old commandment, Jesus also made another change. The words "as yourself" became "as I have loved you." Wow, that's a tough act to follow. Christ's sacrificial life provides a clear and concrete example of real and true love. And he put this love on display on a daily basis with his disciples. He was patient with them, speaking kindly, and showing great concern for their welfare. He instructed, counseled, and comforted them, prayed with them and for them. He admonished them for wrongdoing, and yet compassionately bore with their failings. And most of all, he gave his life, dying so that they and we might live. According to Jesus, this is how others will know that you are one of his followers. Not because you have a shirt or a bumper sticker that says so. Not because we announce it from a stage or a blog or a status update. But because they look at you, at how you live, the things you do and say, and they see Jesus. They see love.
I didn't know love was such a big deal. I don't know about you. I really was. I'm excited to get into this topic in the new year because I would love for it to define us, to define you. What type of person do you want to be this new year, right? How do you want people to see you? How do you want your family to view you? And I've been kind of looking at this idea of love, which is such a predominant thing in culture. I saw a headline just yesterday on my news feed that said, the headline went like this: there have been 8 men who have been killed in Colombia looking for love. That was the headline. 8 men have died. U.S. consulate warns 8 tourists in Colombia, 8 men looking at dating websites, dating apps, have lost their life in Colombia in the recent months to the point there's a warning. But that's what jumped out at me. 8 men looking for love have died, right? And doing a little digging and research for this, I came across a website that says the first 1,001 days of a child's life are the most important days in the formation of their bonding and of their ability to have emotional connection and love with others. And I thought, I was like, the first 1,000 days, I mean, what is that? And so I'm kind of like pulling on a string. That's starting with conception until age 2. Now, our little grandson is like 9, 10 months, and I really look at the little guy going, what does he know? What's he going to remember? He's not going to remember anything, right? Do you remember anything from age 4 and younger? Some of you might. Age 3 and younger? I just was struck with the research that shows that those little people bond with us with the smiles and the eye contact and the feeling comfort and feeling their sense of security. They get most of that by age of 2. I was looking, thought this was interesting. They estimate that 67%, that's 2/3 of our music that we listen to, is on the topic of love. 2/3 of the songs that are written, 67%, has to deal with love, relationships. NPR, National Public Radio, in 2018, did a series called The Great American Read. It was an 8-part series. I'm going to confess I missed it, okay? But apparently, those of you who watch NPR, The Great American Read focused on the greatest 100, somebody selected how they do this, I don't know, greatest 100 novels of all time. And over 8 parts, they looked at these novels, these literary pieces, right? You know what they all had in common? Every single one of the 100 had to deal with love and death. Every single one. Love and death. And so they were talking to the authors about, like, why were these novels like such a big deal? Here were some of the quotes that I thought were interesting. Love, one person said, love is the driving force behind everything that we do. Now, that was interesting. I don't know how many of us act out of love in everything that we do. And then if you pick that apart, I think there is an element where that's true, isn't there? I mean, some of you, it's self-love. Some of you, it's the love of yourself that drives everything you do, not necessarily the love of others. The wanting to protect yourself, wanting to guard yourself, wanting to keep yourself at bay. So that might fit there. Another person said, I love a good love story. I think everybody wants one. If you don't want it, you're trying to get it. If you have it, you're trying to keep it. Another author said, every book on this list is about love and death, which I said to you, and finding that love transcends death. I mean, who's not going to love a good love story? How many of you watch Hallmark stories? They're all the same thing. They're all the same thing, are they not? Guy meets girl at the Christmas tree farm, right? You've seen the memes, you've seen the Instagram, you get it, right? Why do we keep watching them? Because there's something about us that wants to know, is that real? Especially if you don't have it. You wonder, is this thing love for real? Is it permanent? We want to see that things last, someone else wrote. We want to know that you just can't throw love away. As human beings, as readers, we want something to be that important that you would stick with it forever. We are fascinated by the fact that things can go wrong in love, and we don't want to go there. We don't want this sort of thing to happen to us. We want to know that love is real, that love is genuine, that love lasts. Doesn't matter. So over the next few weeks, I want us to look at this idea, this concept, because that's an interesting thing, isn't it? What is love? You can't go buy it. Like you can a car, a house, food, gas. Can't grab it. You can at least grab sand. It goes through your hands, but you can touch it. Can't grab love, right? But there's this thing out here that we embrace, that we want. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a little kid. I don't care if you... I saw my Instagram feed. I thought this was interesting. Came across a thing from Harvard University, done a little research that said that grandparents live longer when they're around their grandchildren. That adults live longer when they have a connection to their grandchildren. And I thought it was interesting, not their kids. Didn't say their kids. Said their grandchildren, right? Why is that? Because there's this thing that we call love, bonding. We want to know that we connect with somebody. What are the benefits of love? Because, see, this is why I get all attached to this kind of thing, right? I won't bore you with this, but I came across, I think this was a Mayo Clinic, people who are connected, who feel a bond with other people, who don't feel isolated, who don't feel alone, who feel like they love somebody and somebody loves them, are healthier. You physically are healthier. They've done the studies that show that it reduces tension. Your cardiovascular flows better. You fight disease better than people who are alone and feel lost and feel isolated. People who are in love or feel loved feel there's a better social, emotional connectedness. You're not as awkward. Show me somebody who doesn't know what love is, and I will show you probably a pretty awkward person. Can we agree? And I'm not slamming anybody. I'm just saying, when we say that's true, people who can't connect with other people are generally awkward emotionally and socially. Those who figure out how to do this connection thing, it is better for them. Love decreases worry and anxiety. This is one here that says, like, it helps your gut. I don't understand what that's about, because I would think the chocolate and the other stuff would mess with you, okay? But supposedly it just helps you better inside. Actually, last thing here was improve your sleep. You're less stressed out when you're connected to other people, when you're connected to at least one other person, when you feel like that person loves you, you love them. Your world is better. And then there's the element of what I think, beyond the physical, emotional, is the spiritual things that happen when we understand what love is and we love. Are you in love this morning? Is there anybody you love? I'm not really trying to put anybody in the spot. I'm really trying to ask you. Heart question. Anybody you really care about? Is there anybody that really cares about you? When you have to peel it all back, is there beyond a shadow of a doubt someone that cares about you? And if you can answer yes, you should consider yourself lucky. Because I bet we vastly underestimate the number of people who would say, I'm not sure there's anybody that actually cares about me, that actually loves me. Some of us are unlovable. That makes it hard. Some of us are ornery, mean, rude. I know, because I feel like I'm in that category. And so, how can we become people who love? Well, part of our problem is this, right? It's confusing. I love chocolate. I love my wife. I love pizza. I love my baseball team. We use the word in a variety of ways, and then we can't figure out, what is the whole, I was thinking about this. How many of you remember what DTR is? Anybody chuckling enough? No, one man chuckling with DTR. You know what DTR is, right? Define the relationship. How many DTR talks did you have to have? How many times do you have to sit down and define the relationship, right? Where are we at? Where is this going? Okay? And it's because, I really like you, I love you, and somewhere in between, right? Well, I won't bore you, but in the New Testament with the Greek, they just had different words for love that expressed different, different ways or means of love. Eros is where we get the word erotic from. It's the physical attraction. You might use the word lust there. It's the idea of your body is stimulated in another direction, and not just the flesh. You could be erotic about chocolate or about whatever, right? But it's the idea that your body is motivated by something. Storage, that word has to do with the family, the feelings that you have towards family. Now, not, I would say, a spouse, because a spouse you choose, but the family that you have that you didn't get to choose, and you don't know what to do with them. You just came out of the holidays. Trust me, I know some of you experienced that. Well, I'm supposed to like them. I'm supposed to love them, but I can't stand to be around them. Okay? Phileo, city of Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. Those are those friendships. Those are the bonds that you form. Those are some of you who have had friends since college. Because college was really the first time, maybe high school, but some of you went away to college. And in college you started living with people around the clock, and you're having meals together, and you're doing football games on the weekends together, and you're just kind of living life together. And some of you, those relationships have stayed with you to where you are today. That's brotherly love. That's just that bond, that affection you have with someone else that isn't family, that you chose and they chose you, and you're still hanging out, and you still pick up the phone, and you can go months, right? Pick up the phone and start talking to somebody like it was yesterday. And then the Greeks had this word called agape. Now, agape is a love that's committed to doing what is in the best interest of the person you love for. The other words there are largely feeling driven. And this is where I think we get confused when it comes to talking about loving people, is what if you don't feel like it? How many parents ask your kid to do something and they say, I don't feel like it. And your response is, I didn't ask you about your feelings. I don't care about your feelings. I just need you to do it. Can't you just do this for me? I don't want to. It doesn't matter. Just do it. Right? When we're talking about agape love, and this word is actually predominantly used in the Bible. The culture of Jesus' day didn't talk about this. We're going to show you in a moment why. But this idea of wanting the best for the person that you have in mind, not regardless of how you feel about them, was the love that Jesus talked about in the video that I just showed you when he said, hey, by this will all men know you're my disciples, when you love one another, when you want the best for other people. And it was radically different when he talked about it. And I think it's the one thing, in fact, Jesus said it is the one thing that will set you apart as a Christian more than any other thing. And I want to talk about my creed, and I want to talk about my beliefs, and I want to talk about what I do and where I go on Sunday and what I don't do, and I don't do this and I do that. And a lot of that, I'm just going to say, is really far down the totem pole to your love for other people. But how can I do that? Because, Mike, you don't know what you're asking. You don't know my family. You don't know my spouse. You don't know my kids. You don't know my coworker. You don't know my boss. You don't know my neighbor. I had a guy years ago say, you want me to love my neighbor? His dog poops in my yard. That was it. And it drove him crazy. The dog poops in the yard and he won't pick it up. And I've talked to him about it. What am I supposed to do? Drove him crazy. How do we love that kind of person? Well, if you're waiting for your feelings, you're going to wait a long time. Your feelings aren't ever going to get there. You're going to be like your child saying to you, I don't feel like it. And it's going to come back to, Jesus didn't ask you if you feel like it. He's saying, do you want the best for that person? What's in the best interest? And the second sentence is interesting. It's a willingness to sacrifice if necessary for their sake. I hate sacrificing. I'm just right. If you've been around, you know. I've gotten a lot better. I'm going to say, I've gotten a lot better about emptying the dishwasher. I hate the empty dishwasher. It's just not my job. I don't feel like emptying the dishwasher. I don't know how much more real I can be with you. It just is not me. God didn't make me to empty dishwashers. It's not why I was put on this earth. Can't someone else do it? I love when we had Ryan and Casey, because they're sitting here. I love when they were in the house, because I could say to Patty, she said, do you empty the dishwasher? I said, well, ask Ryan and Casey. It's not my job. I don't even know if you can appreciate the depth of sacrifice we're talking about when I have to empty the dishwasher. And y'all laughing like, but I'm being serious with you. Willingness to sacrifice for their sake if necessary. And we don't like to sacrifice. You don't like to sacrifice yourself. You don't like to sacrifice your time. You wouldn't like to sacrifice your reputation. You don't want to put yourself down for somebody else. And that's why it's hard for us to love. If you're a Republican, it is hard for you to love a Democrat. If you're a Democrat, it is hard for you to love and want the best for the Republican Party. You just don't want to do it. If you have money, it is hard for you to love those without money because you think to yourself, why don't they just do like I did? If you don't have money, it's very hard for you to love people with money because you think, why don't they help me more? How come they're not helping me? If you're in the church, it's sometimes hard to love people outside the church because they don't believe and think like you do. They don't act like you do. And those outside the church want to point fingers at the people inside the church. Say, look at them, they're a bunch of hypocrites. You see where we get all confused, and it is hard for us to say that we genuinely love other people. And so my challenge over the next few weeks is to do this for us, is to really have us take a hard look at our own lives and see, does the love of Christ pour out of us like Jesus wants it to? Do you exhibit the love of Christ? Or has culture influenced who you love and who you don't love? Are there other things other than the Word of God, the Scriptures, that dictate how you form opinions, live your life, treat other people? If you have your Bible, would you open it to John 13, or maybe you've got an app? I put it up there so that we can see it. John 13, give you the background real quickly here. In John 13, Jesus is on his way to the cross. He knows he's on his way to the cross. This takes place in what is called the upper room. The upper room was where Jesus met with his disciples. He had the Last Supper with them. After the Last Supper, he says to Judas, hey, dude, whatever you're going to do, now's the time. So Judas vacates. Judas is going to turn him in now. This is the opportunity. And Jesus then is left alone with the other 11 guys. And in the midst of this is when Jesus utters these words in John 13, 34 and 35. May be familiar to you if you've been in church. If not, it's all well and good. You probably might ring a bell. He said to them, a new command I give you, that you would love one another. In fact, if you're reading along, if you see up there, how many times does he use the word love in these two short verses? A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, all men will know you're my disciples if you love one another. 4 times in 2 verses. He seems to really be keying on this thing, saying, hey, this thing of love, and it's the word agape, so it's not the feeling-oriented word. He's not using phileo. It's not brotherly, like, hey, we formed a bond here. He said, I'm giving you this new command that you would love one another. Now, one of the things I did was I asked myself, well, what was so new about this? Because they were supposed to love, right? This is, what's one of the 10 commandments? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, right? When they came to Jesus, what are the greatest commandments? When we got all these, what are the best ones, Jesus? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. They knew they were supposed to love. So I get a little confused here when Jesus says, well, I'm giving you this new command. Okay? What was new about it? Well, Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount, the first sermon Jesus ever gave. Watch these words. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. I like you if you like me. If you're a pain in my butt, I'm going to be a pain in yours. That's how the world operates. You have heard it said, you should love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. This would have been mind-boggling. It still is today. You think about your world. Think about the last time you did good for somebody that you don't like. Not the last time you did something good for somebody you like, because that's natural. We do that all day long. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. Read your daily newspaper. Read the headlines. That's what people are out there doing. Hey, you're on my team, I'll be on your team. You cross me? Oh, look out. That's the way we operate. How's your family operate? Are there people you didn't buy gifts for this year? How come you didn't buy gifts for them? How many of you didn't buy gifts for somebody because you're at odds with them? Well, we're not, so I'm not, They didn't get me a gift last year. I'm not getting them one this year. We do it all day long. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to beat you up for it. I'm saying all you're doing is normal. That's what Jesus said. This is the way the world operates. Do good to those who do good to you, and those who don't good to you, stab them in the back. I say to you, we give you a new command. I'm going to give you a new way of doing this. You are not just to love your tribe. You are not just to care for those that think and act and smell and do the same things you do. You are to care for, love, be motivated towards, want the best for those who are different from you. That you cannot do. You won't do it. Why? Because it goes against every fiber in your body. Unless your heart has been changed by the love of Christ. How does Jesus love? Because he sets himself up here. He says, I want you to love one another as I have loved you. In the same manner that I have loved you, that I care for you, that's how I want you to love and treat other people. You can't do it by yourself. Only by the Spirit of God living in you. Only by a heart that's been transformed by Jesus. And so therefore, when I see people being mean to people, and does it doesn't bother me because I get it's natural. What does bother me is when I see Christians, when I see people who name the name of Jesus, who say that they are followers of Jesus, when I see those people acting in the same way as everybody else, that concerns me. Because the two can't be true. A new command I give you, not a suggestion, not an idea, not a, hey, this is like, why don't you try this? This is a commission. This is marching orders. This is what I want you to do. Those of you in the military, if you've served in any capacity where there is a rule of order, you understand that. Some of you in your businesses, you understand it. When the CEO says, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to operate, this is how you will operate, or you will find another job. You didn't get a vote. You didn't say, I don't like this policy, I don't want to do this policy, right? If you don't like it, they will say, fine, you're just not going to be employed here, turn in your key. This is what Jesus is saying here. And I think in the church, we're so like, we don't want to hurt people's feelings, it sounds so judgmental. For the pastor to stand there and say, do you love others? Do you really want the best for other people? Is this a suggestion for you, like when you feel like it, like if it's a good Tuesday? This is a new command that I give you. That you would love others in the same manner as I have loved you. This is how all men, everybody watching, will know that you belong to me when you love one another. Not because you have a Joy FM bumper sticker. Not because you vote a certain way. Not because you got an I Heart Jesus t-shirt on. It is truly, bottom line, how do I treat other people? When you watch me in public on a basketball court officiating a game, How do I respond to coaches who get in my face? How do I respond to athletes who F you? How does my faith play out there? When I'm wronged in the business sector, how do I respond? When I'm not getting along with my wife or my kids, how do I respond? This is the acid test to my faith. That's why, friends, I mean this. That's what makes this so radical. That's what makes it really revolutionary and set them apart. So how do I do that? How does the love of Jesus help me? Let me give you 3 ways. I've got them in your outline. What is the love of Jesus? It serves without expecting anything in return. Verse 1 of the chapter is when Jesus washed their feet. In John chapter 13, verse 1, Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. So here it is. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. Well, what did he do? Well, the evening meal was being served. The devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot to betray Jesus, and Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and he had come from God. He was returning to God, so he got up from the meal. He took off his outer clothing, and he wrapped a towel around his waist, and after that, he poured water, began to wash his disciples' feet. He was drying them with the towel wrapped around him. He got up and did the job nobody else wanted to do. Jesus loved his men. It was customary that there would be a servant boy there to wash everyone's feet. It's just like hugging people and taking their coat. But there was none there. And I promise you, they were all looking around at each other going, I'm not going to do that. There's no way I'm getting on my knees for these people. I mean, they were your friends. But you're not going to serve your friends, right? I mean, well, some of you might, right? You might get out drinks. But would you get dirty for your friends? Because it's somebody else's job to do this. Have you ever been in an organization where people say, it's not my job? How does that play out? How's that, honestly, I'm going to say, how does it work? I will show you a very rigid organization. I will show you an organization that's not caring for other people, that's only interested in covering their butt. That's all they're interested in doing, because it's not their job. Somebody else's job to do that. You ever been in a church where people say, it's not my job? I will show you a very sterile, stiff congregation. It's not my job. Somebody else's job. I don't know whose job it is. No, I just know it's not mine. Jesus served them without expecting anything else in return. He was the Son of God. He should have been the one served. They knew that. And he's the one who gets up and he takes and he just begins to hey, Peter, hey, Matthew, hey, Judas. Some point in there, you know the story. It says he came to Simon Peter, and Simon said, Lord, you're not going to wash my feet, are you? Jesus said, you don't realize what I'm doing. Later you'll get it. No, Peter said, you're never going to wash my feet. I'm not going to let you, Jesus, wash my feet. Jesus said, unless I wash you, you will have no part with me. And then Peter said, well, then just wash all of me. And Jesus told him a little parable, said, man, the guy doesn't need to be wholly bathed. Just needs his feet clean because they get dirty walking on the road. Our life, we get dirty. We're in right relationship with Jesus, but we need to have forgiveness extended to us. Jesus was willing to sacrifice. To sacrifice for someone is to choose to serve them over choosing to serve yourself. Show me an organization, a team, a church, a business, where the people are willing to serve other people, and I will show you a highly successful, highly functioning group of people. Because you're not concerned with covering your tail, you're concerned with covering the other person's tail. And why would you do that unless you cared for them? Show me a family that's interested in protecting each other, protecting each other's reputation, standing up for one another. Show me a family that's willing to do that, and I will show you a family that's deeply committed to one another and then greatly, genuinely in love with each other. Show me a family that is sort of bickering and like, oh man, and they're like taking shots, and when someone comes and wants to talk smack against somebody, they sort of like, at best they stay silent. Sometimes they join in. You don't think it happens? Been around a water cooler lately? Man, yeah, you think your wife is bad. You think your husband's bad. You should see mine. Oh, that's nothing. Here's what they did last weekend. You show me a family operating like that, I'll show you a family that's on the bounds of going like this. You show me a spouse that when that conversation comes up, doesn't enter into it, in fact, maybe even tries to push back a little bit. I'll show you a couple that's probably got a really good shot at making it. It serves people without expecting anything in return. And we want to know how we're going to get paid. This guy, Private First Class Ralph Johnson, was in Vietnam. 1968, he was a 19-year-old from the South, living in the Jim Crow era. He enlisted, was in Vietnam, and his platoon of Marines was under attack from the Viet Cong. When he and two others were in a foxhole, and a hand grenade was thrown into the foxhole. And without batting an eyelash, Ralph Johnson yelled "grenade" and dove on top of the grenade. He was killed instantly while his two comrades lived. That was 1968. Word of what he did, being a black man, saved two white guys that were in the foxhole with him, spread almost immediately, and the Marines, as the story goes, survived that battle, actually won that battle, largely in part as they did it fighting for Ralph Johnson. Now, you think about that for a second. One Marine gives his life for two buddies in a foxhole. How many Marines passed? What, other than his family, isn't it easy to say, what's the big deal? I mean, we get his family, we care, right? So Ralph's story is interesting because in 1991, in Charleston, South Carolina, they renamed the Veterans Memorial Hospital after Ralph Johnson. And in 2018, he had a a destroyer, the USS Ralph Johnson, was named after him, after his sacrifice. Now, he did all of that, I just was struck with the fact that a guy laid down his life for two friends and the world noticed. But in the real time, in the real moment, that wasn't what motivated him. And I want to ask you to think about something, friends. I wonder if in the real moment when it's hard to love somebody, but you do it because the love of Christ motivates you, you might not get a pat on the back right then. You might not even really get any recognition. But I want to remind you of something. I think Jesus notices. Ralph Johnson got a little bit of a tribute here, not enough to make up for his life, not at all. But it was recognized. And it was forever grateful for the two friends and one other person that was right there nearby that foxhole that day when their life and their body parts were spared because of his actions. One of the things the love of Christ does is it enables me to serve you without expecting anything in return. You can serve other people, not for them, but because you've been served. Hey, real quickly, the second thing, love of Jesus says we're not afraid to speak the truth. Jesus told Peter, if I don't wash your feet, you've got no part with me. He went on to tell him, he said, do you not understand what I've done for you? I'm reading down about verse 12 now. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, I want you to wash one another's feet. I've set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth, Jesus says. No servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. Jesus tells us the truth and allows us then to be free to speak the truth to other people. Jesus spoke the truth to Peter. Jesus spoke the truth to a woman that was not doing very well in her relationships. Jesus spoke the truth to those guys when they were fighting. Jesus spoke the truth to a woman that came and was thrown at his feet, caught in adultery, and he said, "Where are those who condemn you? Go, I don't condemn you." I find people that lie are hiding. Don't you find that to be true? Liars are hiders. I don't know what they're hiding. Probably a variety of things, right? But when we follow Jesus, he allows us to live in truthfulness, to be honest with one another. You can't have real relationships with fake. You can't have a real marriage if you're not real with each other. You won't have a great family if your kids are afraid and there's not truth and openness in your family. If people have to hide, they shut down. Jesus allows us to speak the truth. We should be people of truth. You should be a man and woman of integrity, and you should expect the same from those around you. And when you acquiesce and give in to dishonesty and half-truths, you become less of a person. And I know why you do it. You don't want the fight. You don't want the, oh man, I don't want to pick over this. But at the end of the day, Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. Everybody who comes to the Father has to come through me." He tells us the truth. He tells you the truth that you are loved. Romans 8, nothing shall separate you from the love of God. What possible thing could be out there? Nothing will separate you from the love of the Father. That's the truth. Let us be people of truth. Let's expect that we want truthfulness from those who lead us, whether at your job, in your neighborhood association, from our government. Let's not back off of that because we're fearful. The last thing is the love of Jesus helps me care about those who are not like us. This is what made the commandment crazy. Will you look around the room? Just look around the room. Not trick, just look around the room. Look at these fun people. Why on earth would you be here? Seriously. Why? We're different. We have different colors, different nationalities. I'm sure we got different belief systems, different political systems. Why? If it wasn't 10 degrees, playing golf is great on Sunday morning. Why? Jesus said, "I'm going to form a new tribe, and it's based on this, that you would love one another, that you would care about those people that aren't like you. You would care about the unborn. They're not like you. You're all born. Do you care about the unborn? Do you care about the elderly? Do you care about the person that is different belief system than you? Care about the person that's white collar, blue collar? Care about our teens? They're not like many of you. Care about them? Care what's going on in the world? Care about children? They're not like you. Do I care about babies except I have a grandson? Why would I care about babies? I'm not one. Can't speak their language. Can't identify with them. Why care about them? Do you care about people that are not like you? And if you don't, I'm just asking, why not? And I know the answer, because that's what's natural. You will care about people that are like you. Now can you see why the love of Christ, if it constrains you, if it controls you, you will care about people that are not like you? Jesus loved Judas, even as he watched him go out the door. Jesus loved his men, even as he washed their feet and they were bickering and fighting and said, I'm not going to get my hands dirty. Jesus loved you even when you had your back to him, wanted nothing to do with him, fist up in the air to him. Can you see why the love of Christ, if it motivated a congregation as we are here today and just sent us out and we cared about people that weren't like us, really wanted to see the best for them, not talking about how you feel about them, but you just want the best for them. You want to see God's best for them. So you're willing to speak truth when you need to speak truth. You're willing to serve them when it's an opportunity there to serve them. You show me a group of people willing to do that, get their hands dirty with caring for people that aren't like them. I will show you an infectious group that people want to be around. You know you want to be around people like that because you feel like you benefit. You feel like you're getting something out of it because you're being served. And you want that. You like that. And Jesus says, man, that feeling that you want for yourself, what if you were that kind of person for others? That's what the love of Christ does. It empowers you to care about other people that aren't like you. How many of you remember, band's coming back up, how many of you remember when you were engaged? If you were married, do you remember your engagement, time, whatever that looked like? I want to recommend, we have 2 copies of this book out in the lobby, Love Does by Bob Goff. If you've not read this, great book. It is, the whole premise of the book is, this is a sermon series, is that love is really a verb. Love is something we do, not something we feel. That's why I talked to you today. Caring for people I didn't talk about how you feel about it. I said you will care for people because you want the best for them. You will do. Love does. So he has a story in here of a guy by the name of Ryan. Ryan came to Bob and said, hey, I was just wondering, I want to engage. I said, I want to propose to this girl I love. Would you take us out in the harbor? And there, as we get out in the harbor, I'm going to propose to her. I'm going to take a ring and, the sun coming down on the bay and all that kind of fun stuff. And Bob says, sure, love to do that. Love to be a part of that, right? So the time comes and they get out there and Bob talks about, he takes them out in the boat and they get out in the middle of the harbor. And unbeknownst to the young lady who's like, what are we doing? Where are we going? He's like, oh, just come on. She's playing along with it and they get out there. And so they sort of park the boat about 50 yards from the shore, if you can picture this. The sun is just sort of setting. And on the shoreline that can still be seen, this guy had like 50 of his friends with candles in the shape of, will you marry me? Now, he did that in case he couldn't get the words out. So he's out there, he's on the boat, he drops to one knee, gets the ring out, they light their candles, and he sort of stutters, and she's like overwhelmed. And Bob had arranged for the Coast Guard fireboat to like be 100 yards off to the right. And so at the right time, when she gets all teary-eyed and misty, and she's saying, yes, he gives a thumb up to the Coast Guard, and they start the cannons, and they're just blowing the cannons, and you got people on the shore clapping and going crazy. And then I thought what was interesting is the way he summed up this chapter. He said, watching Ryan lose himself in love reminded me that being engaged isn't just an event that happens when a guy gets on one knee and puts a ring on his true love's finger. Being engaged is a way of doing life. It's a way of living and loving. It's about going to extremes and expressing the bright hope that life offers us, a hope that makes us brave and shuts out darkness. That's what I want my life to be all about, full of abandon, whimsy, and in love. I want to be engaged to life and with life. He says, I enjoy those parts of the Bible where Jesus talks about how much he loves his bride. It makes me wonder if the trees and the mountains and the rivers are things he planned in advance, knowing that they would wow us. I wonder if God returned over and over to this world he placed us in, thinking what he had created was good, but it could be even better, even grander. I wonder if he thought each foggy morning, each soft rain, each field of wildflowers would be a quiet and audacious way to demonstrate his tremendous love for you. He said, I don't know if God was a little bit like Ryan when he created everything, or if Ryan was a little bit like God. But I do know that Ryan's love, his audacious love for his new bride, was the best example that I could think of the love that Christ has for his bride, you. Is that possible? When you walk out of here, is it possible that God is just wide-eyed crazy about you? That's an interesting question for you. And I can't answer it. I know it's true. I'm going to pray for us. And then these guys are going to lead us in a song. And as you sing the song, if there's a part of your heart that would like to be open to experiencing more of the Lord's love, then I would just invite you to talk to him while you're singing. So open yourself up and say, Lord, if that's any part of that's true, I'd really like to know it. Not just talk about it, I'd like to know it. Father, I pray that you might reinforce in us drive it deep in us that we are a loved people, that you are indeed crazy about us. Your word says, what else could you do to show your love for us? You gave us your one and only Son, that whosoever would believe in him would have eternal life, to live forever with you, starting today. Jesus, I pray that if there's anybody either listening online or here live that needs to be reminded of your great care for them, you'd get that message through to them. And I ask it in the name of our Savior. Amen. Hey, stand, let's sing together.